We're going to talk about the volume of a cylinder. And remember that a cylinder is really just the shape of a can. It's round on the top, on the bottom, and then all around. And when we're talking about volume, we're talking about essentially filling this can. So we think about, filling it with water. How much water can we put in here to fill this can? That's what volume means. You can basically think of it as filling the object. So the formula for volume of a cylinder is on the formula sheet. It's pi r squared times height. And so r is radius. So remember, when you're doing a cylinder, the radius is going to be on the top and the bottom of the cylinder is a circle. So remember what radius is. It's half of the diameter. If you don't know that, you need to watch the videos on circles on my Facebook page. So make sure you're dealing with the radius, because sometimes they'll give you the diameter. So it's radius squared times height. So the height is just the height of the cylinder. And pi, remember, is just a number. It's 3.14, but we generally write it as pi when we're dealing with geometry. But that's also on your formula sheet, that pi is 3.14. So that's just a number. And so we'll work a couple of problems here. So we'll start out with, if you have a cylinder, the radius is 5 inches and the height is 7 inches. What is the volume? Well, we just follow the formula, pi r squared. So what's r? What's the radius? 5. So 5 squared times the height, 7. Remember, when they're all written in a row, that means multiplication. When we write them in parentheses, that means multiplication. So pi times 5 squared times 7. Pi is a number, 3.14. 5 squared means 5 times 5, so that's 25, and 7. So 3.14 times 25 times 7. You plug that into your calculator, and you get 549.5 inches cubed. So when you're dealing with volume, you're always dealing with cubic units. So that can also be a key to the problem. If there's a word problem, they talk about cubic, you know you're dealing with a volume problem. But also make sure you label it correctly, and we use a 3 for cubic. So that's a basic idea on how to do a problem like this. On the test, it's probably not going to be this straightforward, where they're going to give you the height and the radius and you just have to figure it out. So we're going to do a couple more problems that are maybe a little bit more involved. So we'll do one. Sometimes they leave the problem in terms, we call it in terms of pi, where they don't actually multiply out the number. Okay? So let's say they say the volume is 108 pi feet cubed. So they just left the pi there. Remember, this is just a number, so it's really 108 times 3.14, but they'll leave it, we say leave it in terms of pi. The height is 12 feet. They might ask you, what is the diameter of the circular part? We'll just leave it like that. So what is the diameter? That's your question if you're given something like this. So again, we just look at the formula and plug in the numbers that we know. Don't get confused by them leaving it in terms of pi. So V, volume, 108 pi. Volume equals pi. R squared, well, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? In order to get the diameter, we need to know what the radius is. So we don't know what that is, so we're just going to leave it there. Times the height. The height is 12. They've given us that. Height is 12, so we just plug in 12 for the height. So this is an algebra problem. If you don't know how to do algebra problems, you need to watch the videos on algebra. So here we're trying to solve for r. Once we know the radius, we multiply it by 2 to get the diameter, right? So how do we get r by itself? Well, we're first going to get rid of this pi. So we're going to divide by pi. If we divide one side by pi, we have to divide the other side by pi. So we're really dividing this whole thing by pi. So these will cancel, and we'll end up with 108 equals r squared times 12. Now we want to get rid of the 12 because we want to get r squared by itself. How do we get rid of the 12? We divide by 12. Again, if you don't know how to do this, watch the videos on algebra. So those cancel. 108 divided by 12 is 9. So r squared equals 9. But we don't want r squared. We want the radius in order to find the diameter. So how do you find r squared, or how do you find r? You take the square root. Square root of r squared is r. Square root of 9 is 3. So the radius is 3, but that's also not the question. The question is, what is the diameter? If the radius is 3, the diameter is just twice the radius. So the diameter is going to be 6 feet. Okay? So again, don't get confused if they leave things in terms of pi. Just kind of carry that through, because again, it's just a number that we're multiplying by. But, you know, you might have to set it up where it's an algebra problem and you're going to have to solve for something. Okay, we'll do another question. Here, let's say you have an oil drum. So I'm going to draw this out. We have an oil drum, and they're going to give us the diameter is 2 feet, and the height is 4 feet. And so they're going to say 1 cubic foot. So again, when you read this, when it says cubic, you know that you are dealing with volume. 1 cubic foot can hold 7.5 gallons of oil. How many gallons can this oil drum hold? So we have this oil drum. They've said the diameter is 2 feet, the height is 4 feet. 1 cubic foot can hold 7.5 gallons of oil. So how many gallons can this oil drum hold? So we need to find the volume of the oil drum. So the volume, pi r squared. So here they're giving us the diameter. So be careful in these problems because they're giving you the diameter. You don't want the diameter, you want the radius. If the diameter is 2, the radius is half of that. So the radius is 1. 1 squared times the height. The height is 4. So the volume, pi, is 3.14. 1 squared is just 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Times 4. So 3.14 times 1 times 4. You plug that into your calculator, and you get 12.56 cubic feet. So if the volume of the drum is 12.56 cubic feet, and 1 cubic foot can hold 7.5 gallons of oil, how many gallons can this oil drum hold? Well, each cubic foot can hold 7.5. We have 12.56 cubic feet. So we just multiply the two together, and we get that this oil drum can hold 94.2 gallons of oil. We're going to do one more problem. So I put up a new problem on the board here. So generally these are going to come in word problems. So don't be scared when you see a word problem. Just think about, read it and maybe read it again and think about what is it asking. So here's the problem. At 11 a.m., water starts flowing into a cylindrical storage tank that is 8 feet in diameter and 12 feet high. if the water is coming into the tank at a rate of 600 cubic feet per hour, at approximately what time will it begin to overflow? Now, some of you are going to look at this problem and think that it's way too hard, but it's not. It's actually not a hard problem at all if you know how to calculate volume of a cylinder. So, because the first thing you should see, cylindrical. The next thing you should see is talking about cubic feet. So that should give you a clue that you're talking about volume. So it says at 11 a.m. water starts flowing into a cylindrical storage tank that is 8 feet in diameter and 12 feet high. So let's just draw that so we can get a little bit of a visual. So 8 feet in diameter. But again, we don't want the diameter. Our formula calls for the radius. So if the diameter is 8 feet, what's the radius? It's half of that. Again, if you don't know that, you need to watch the videos on Facebook about circles. So the radius is 4, and it's 12 feet high. So if the water's coming into the tank at 600 cubic feet per hour, what approximate time will it begin to overflow? So if this is our cylinder storage tank, what is the volume of this? So, and these are the possible answers over here that we're going to get to choose from. The volume is pi r squared. 4 is our radius, right? Half of 8, 4 squared, and our times height, which is 12. So pi 4 squared times 12. That is 3.14. What's 4 squared? 4 times 4, 16 times 12. So if you put that in your calculator, 3.14 times 16 times 12, you're going to get 602.88, and remember the units are cubic feet. So that's the volume of this storage tank. That's how much it can hold. So if water's coming in at the rate of 600 cubic feet per hour, and it can hold 602 cubic feet, so after 1 hour, it's going to be full. If it's coming in at 600 cubic feet and it can only hold 602 cubic feet, I mean, it will be almost full, I should say. So after 1 hour, it's going to be almost full because it's coming in at 600 cubic feet per hour and it can only hold 602 cubic feet. So about what time is it going to begin to overflow? Well, after about an hour. If it starts at 11 a.m., at around noontime, it's going to start to overflow shortly after noon. So that would be the answer to this question.